1954. A kitchen in Omaha. Folgers brewing on the counter and the starch smell of a dress warm from the iron. A mother tells her daughter she cannot accept a ride from Billy Haskell. No explanation. There was a system underneath every courtship rule in this country, and someone erased it on purpose. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly what every girl already knew before she said yes. In post-war America, a girl's future was decided by her neighbors before she made a single choice. Every church congregation, beauty parlor, and PTA meeting kept an unwritten ledger of which girls were respectable and which had damaged their chances. One unchaperoned car ride could do it. One rumor at the soda fountain. Being seen leaving the wrong boy's house. The ledger updated before she knew anyone was watching. Sociologist Willard Waller documented the competitive roots of this rating and dating culture in 1937. The women who enforced it never admitted it existed, because admitting it meant confessing that reputation was a weapon never signed. That ledger is the invisible architecture underneath everything you are about to watch. It decided where a respectable girl could go, who she could be seen with, and what happened to her future the moment she broke a rule she was never told existed. A girl's bedroom in 1953. A rotary phone on the nightstand with the cord pulled tight under a closed door. Her mother can hear the murmur of a conversation, but not the words. A front porch in Indiana with the light left on, and a father's shadow behind the screen door, watching a Chevrolet pull into the driveway 10 minutes before curfew. A vanity mirror in a bathroom the size of a closet, where a girl rehearsed the exact expression she would wear when she met his parents for the first time. This was not a collection of old-fashioned manners. This was a complete operating system built by women who understood that their daughters were walking into a world that watched everything and forgave nothing. Every rule had a reason. Every reason led back to the same invisible ledger. A girl who understood the system could survive it. A girl who did not was already losing before her first date ever began. Number 20. The church basement social. Churches held regular socials, potluck suppers, pie auctions, ice cream socials, holiday bazaars. Single men and women came because the entire community came. Methodist, Baptist, Lutheran. The denomination did not matter. What mattered was the basement. Fluorescent lights humming over long tables covered in white paper. Casserole dishes brought in Pyrex with masking tape on the bottom so the dish came home. The smell of coffee from a 40-cup percolator and sheet cake cut into squares. Girls helping in the kitchen, boys lined along the wall. Somebody's mother watching from the dessert table. A quarter dropped in the donation basket at the door. The whole evening cost nothing. Nobody called it matchmaking. They called it Wednesday night supper. But every woman who married a man from that church knew what those suppers were for. The introduction happened over a paper plate. Both mothers already knew before either child did. In 1955, 49% of Americans attended church every week, the highest figure Gallup ever recorded. Today, that number sits around 30%. The Wednesday night supper went with it. Number 19. The shared party line. Families across rural and suburban America shared a single telephone line with their neighbors. You could hear every conversation on the wire. Some couples met because they had been listening to each other for months. In 1950, 75% of Bell System residential phone customers were on party lines. About 11 million subscribers shared the same wire. There was a Western Electric Model 500, black and heavy as a brick. Each household had its own ring pattern, 2 short and 1 long for the Hendersons, 1 long and 2 short for the Millers. If you lifted the receiver quietly and covered the mouthpiece, You could hear everything. A girl's voice talking to her sister about Saturday. A boy 3 farms over, listening. The film Pillow Talk in 1959 built its entire romance around a shared party line. Doris Day and Rock Hudson fought over the wire until they fell in love on it. By the mid-1960s, private lines became the standard. The shared wire went silent, and with it went the strangest, most accidental form of courtship America ever invented. You fell in love with a voice before you ever saw a face. No photograph, no profile, just the sound of someone being themselves when they thought nobody was listening. Number 18, the roller skating rink. Roller rinks were the social hubs of small-town America. Teenagers went on Friday and Saturday nights. The couple's only skate was when it happened. You could smell varnished hardwood and rented leather boots. Organ music played before the DJ switched to 45s. Admission was 50 cents. Skate rental was a quarter. The overhead lights dimmed for the couple's skate. A boy rolled up beside a girl he had been watching for half an hour. He held out his hand. She took it. For 3 minutes, under a rotating mirror ball, they held onto each other at 15 miles an hour. Neither one let go. The rink was the only place a boy could hold a girl's hand in public without anyone raising an eyebrow. The excuse was balance. The truth was something else entirely. Number 17, the soda fountain. The drugstore soda fountain reached its peak between the 1920s and the 1950s. For a generation, it was the center of American social life. Rexall, Walgreens, the corner drugstore with a marble counter and chrome stools that swiveled, a cherry Coke for a dime, a chocolate malt for 15 cents. The man behind the counter in his white paper hat, pulling the chrome handles, a courting couple sharing one glass with 2 paper straws. A boy slid onto the stool next to a girl he recognized from school. He said nothing remarkable. She laughed anyway. He bought her a second Coke, 10 cents to change a life. Then sodas were bottled and sold everywhere. People stopped coming to the counter. When the soda fountain closed, the only place in town where a boy could sit next to a girl without a reason closed with it. Number 16, the county fair midway. County and state fairs drew entire communities once a year. Young men and women who lived miles apart met on the midway at the livestock barns in the grandstand. Late August heat and the smell of funnel cake grease and sawdust. The Ferris wheel lit against a darkening sky. A boy won a stuffed bear at the ring toss for 35 cents and gave it to a girl standing 3 people back. She did not know his name. She carried that bear home in the bed of her father's pickup. The tilt-a-whirl threw them against each other. She did not pull away. The fair lasted 1 week a year. That was enough. Some families drove 40 miles on dirt roads to get there, not for the rides, but for the chance to be seen. For 1 week, the whole county was in one place, and in one place, anything could happen. Number 15, the USO dance. The United Service Organizations formed in 1941 to provide recreation for troops on leave. Young women volunteered as hostesses. They danced with soldiers, sailors, and airmen. Many married the men they met on that floor. Big band music on a scratchy PA system. Crepe-soled shoes on a gymnasium floor. A boy in dress uniform who had never danced before. A girl who taught him the box step in under a minute. Coffee and donuts served from a folding table. Hostesses were told not to date the servicemen. That was the rule. One woman agreed to say the numbers out loud, but not write them down. By the time she reached her room at the YMCA, the phone was ringing. After 6 dates, they married in September 1945. She danced with a stranger in uniform on a Saturday night. 50 years later, she was still married to him. Number 14. The typing pool and the factory floor. Women worked as typists, secretaries, and switchboard operators. Others worked assembly lines. Men worked in the same buildings. Proximity did the rest. You could hear the clatter of Royal typewriters in rows. Carbon paper stained fingertips. A young man from accounting walked past the typing pool every morning at 8:15. He nodded on Monday. He said good morning on Wednesday. By Friday, he asked if she wanted coffee from the cart. The factory version was louder, stamping presses and conveyor belts, a lunch whistle at noon. She sat on an overturned crate eating a sandwich from a brown bag. He sat down beside her on the same crate, same break, every day for 3 months until he finally asked. Nobody scheduled it. Nobody swiped right. He just showed up at the same place at the same time until showing up became the point. The workplace did not try to create romance. It just put two people close enough together for long enough that nature handled the rest. Number 13. The boarding house dining table. Young people who moved to cities for work often lived in boarding houses, rooming houses with shared meals. They met at the breakfast table, at dinner, on the front steps. $7 a week for a room and 2 meals a day. A landlady who ran the house like a captain runs a ship. Boarders sat at a long table at 6:30 sharp. Pot roast on Tuesday. Meatloaf on Thursday. A young woman from Scranton with a secretarial job. A young man apprenticing at the machine shop on Broad Street. They passed the breadbasket, said excuse me, and learned each other over months of suppers eaten 3 feet apart. There was no first date. There was no grand gesture. Just a slow accumulation of small moments. The way she held her coffee cup. The way he always stood when she entered the room. Intimacy built not from excitement, but from repetition. By the time he asked her to walk with him on a Sunday afternoon, she already knew the answer. She had known it since the second week. Number 12. The Woolworths lunch counter. Woolworths 5 and dime stores had lunch counters where anyone could sit down for a cheap meal. No reservation, no plan, just a stool. Red vinyl stools bolted to the floor. Formica wiped clean with a rag. Grilled cheese for 15 cents. Coffee for a nickel. First come, first served. You sat next to whoever showed up. A girl who came in every Tuesday and ordered the same thing. A boy who noticed. The waitress noticed too and started seating him one stool closer. Woolworths closed its last American store in 1997. 400 locations, gone. And with them went the last counter where a stranger could sit down for a nickel and discover that the rest of his life was one stool over. Number 11. The blind date arranged by your aunt. Aunts, older cousins, and church ladies arranged introductions between young people they considered a match. It was practically a civic duty. Your Aunt Lorraine saw a young man at the Knights of Columbus fish fry. He worked at the phone company, had good posture, and did not drink. She got his mother's name from someone at the parish and called on Monday. By Thursday, your mother told you to put on your good dress. You were going to Aunt Lorraine's on Saturday, and a young man named Gerald would be there. You protested, and then you went. Gerald brought flowers for your aunt, and he pulled out your chair. You married him in 11 months. It was not romantic, and it was not spontaneous. It was an older woman who survived her own marriage, deciding she was qualified to start yours. She was usually right. Number 10. The high school dance. The high school dance was where going steady began. Homecoming, prom, Sadie Hawkins. A gymnasium draped in streamers and paper lanterns strung from the basketball hoops. The band was 5 boys from the junior class who knew 4 songs. He put his class ring on a chain around her neck. That ring weighed half an ounce and meant everything. A slow dance at arm's length because the chaperone was watching. Going steady in the 50s required a visible token, a class ring, a letterman sweater, something the whole school could see. She wore his ring on a chain for 6 months. Then she wore his name for 50 years. Number 9. The hayride. Churches and farm families organized hayrides every autumn. Flatbed wagons were pulled by a John Deere tractor along country roads at dusk, and young people sat in the hay in the dark together. A John Deere pulled a flatbed stacked with straw bales. A kerosene lantern hung on the back rail. The smell of dry hay, October air, and Wrigley's spearmint gum filled the night. 15 teenagers packed onto the wagon. Somewhere past the Miller farm, when the lantern swung the other way, a boy put his arm around a girl's shoulder. She let it stay. The chaperone was up front on the tractor and could not see a thing. The wagon rolled for an hour through back roads that had no streetlights, just stars, the low rumble of the engine, and the sound of somebody laughing in the dark. By the time the tractor turned back toward the church parking lot, 2 people who had barely spoken that morning were holding hands under a horse blanket. An entire courtship started, and no one spent a dime. Number 8. The Saturday Night Dance Hall. Public dance halls operated in nearly every American town. Admission was low, the floor was open, a live band played on a wooden stage. The hardwood floor was dusted with cornmeal to make the shoes slide. 50 cents for men, 25 cents for women. He crossed the floor to ask her to dance. She could say no. She could say yes. If she said yes, they had 3 minutes of music, his hand on the small of her back, and a conversation held close enough to smell her ivory soap. A slow number at the end of the night decided who was driving whom home. No swiping, no matching. Just a man walking across a room, in front of everyone he knew, asking a woman to dance. The risk was public. That is exactly what made the courage mean something. Number 7. The Lonely Hearts column. Newspapers ran personal advertisements in the classifieds. 2 lines describing yourself and what you wanted. Replies came by mail. Young man, 28, steady employment, seeks sincere woman for friendship and possible marriage. Enjoys fishing and church. Write box 412. 3 cents a word. She read it at the kitchen table over coffee. She wrote a careful letter on good stationery. She sealed it. She mailed it to a post office box. His reply arrived 9 days later. The penmanship was neat. He spelled everything correctly. That mattered. They call it a dating app now. In 1952, they called it 3 cents a word and a stamp. Number 6. The drive-in theater. Drive-in theaters were group social events. Teenagers went in carloads. A boy met a girl because she rode with his buddy's date, or she was parked 1 row over. It cost $1 a carload at some theaters. A speaker box hooked on the window crackled and hummed. 6 teenagers packed into a 1953 Chevy Bel Air. 2 couples and 2 singles. The boy in the back had never met the girl up front. By the second feature, they were sharing popcorn and pretending to watch the screen. At their peak, 4,000 drive-in theaters operated across America. About 330 remain. And with them went the only place where a car full of teenagers could arrange an introduction without a single adult knowing. Number 5. The military pen pal. During and after the wars, young women wrote letters to servicemen they had never met. Churches and the Red Cross organized the introductions. Some of those letters became marriages. A 3-cent stamp, a name and serial number pinned to a church bulletin board. She wrote to a soldier in Korea she had never seen. He wrote back from a tent on a hillside with a pencil stub. The letters took 2 weeks each way. She described the weather in Indiana. He described nothing about the war. Over 6 months, they built a version of each other made entirely of words. When he stepped onto her porch with his duffel bag, she recognized his handwriting before she recognized his face. A letter is a commitment. You cannot unsend it. You cannot edit it at midnight. It arrives in your own hand and says exactly what you meant. Number 4. The Sunday Evening Walk. In towns across America, families walked after supper on Sunday evenings, down Main Street, past the park, along the sidewalk. Young people saw each other, nodded, stopped, talked. 6 o'clock in June. The dishes done. The screen door banging shut. A girl in a pressed skirt walking the same 4 blocks she had walked every Sunday since she was 12. A boy on the opposite sidewalk who tipped his hat. He crossed the street and fell into step beside her. They walked the 4 blocks twice and said almost nothing. He walked her home. He came back the following Sunday and the one after that. No car, no money, no plan. Just a sidewalk and the willingness to walk the same direction and see what happened. Number 3. The Fraternal Lodge Dance. The Elks, the Moose, the VFW, the Knights of Columbus. Every fraternal organization held regular dances and dinners. Members brought families, young people met. The Elks Lodge on Route 9, gravel parking lot and a neon sign out front. Dinner dance on the first Saturday of the month. Prime rib, $2.50 a plate, a 4-piece combo on a riser in the corner. His father was an elk. Her father was an elk. They had been in the same room 100 times as children. Then she turned 17 and something changed. He asked her to dance because his father told him to. She said yes because her mother was watching. In their early 20th century peak, fraternal orders counted nearly 1 in 3 American men as members. Most of those halls sit dark now. The neon is off. The parking lots are cracked, and the social life they once provided has no replacement. Number 2. The front porch. The front porch was the stage where courtship was performed. It was not a room. It was a statement. A porch swing on a chain that creaked. A glass of iced tea sweating on the railing. Fireflies rising from the yard. A boy parked at the curb and walked up the front path where her father could see him coming. He sat with the family first and talked to her father about the weather, about work, and about nothing. Her mother brought lemonade. Then, and only then, the 2 of them were left on the swing. Front door open, kitchen light on. The whole neighborhood watching. That was the point. Where a girl met a man was only the first chapter. What she did after that meeting was governed by a set of rules so precise they could fill a book that nobody ever printed. She could walk into the right soda fountain and still walk out having failed a test she never knew she was taking. Number 20. She never called a boy first. A girl did not pick up the telephone and call a boy. She waited. If he was interested, he called her on the family telephone, and whoever answered that phone was almost certainly not her. The rotary phone on the kitchen wall. The click, click, click of the dial coming back around. The long cord that barely reached the hallway. Her little brother listening from the next room. Party lines in smaller towns where neighbors could listen in. 17 magazine told girls plainly how to chase men until they catch you. The entire game was to signal interest without initiating. A glance across the cafeteria, a comment to his friend's sister, but never, under any circumstance, a direct phone call. It was absolutely unheard of for a woman to be so bold as to ask a gentleman on a date. If a girl called a boy's house, his mother answered, and his mother told every other mother at church on Sunday. The news spread faster than any gossip column ever could in a small town where everyone already knew your name. That telephone was not a device. It was a test of patience. And patience, in those years, was how a girl proved she understood her own worth. She did not chase. She chose from among those who had the nerve to dial. The consequence was plain. Only women considered floozies were forward enough to ask a guy out on a date first. That word, forward, could follow a girl through her entire high school career. One phone call to a boy's house, and the assumption was made, not by the boy, but by his mother. And mothers had long memories. Number 19. She never accepted a last-minute date. If a young man wanted to ask a lady out for a Friday night movie, he had to inquire by Wednesday at the very latest. Asking someone for a date the day of was a big no, and it was considered to be in very poor taste. A girl who said yes to a Saturday call on Saturday afternoon was telling the world she had nothing better to do. A woman's popularity depended on building and maintaining the impression that she was greatly in demand. Turn down requests made at the last minute. Be seen with popular young men in the right places. Cultivate the appearance of a full calendar. The girls who mastered this never appeared desperate, and desperation was the one thing no amount of beauty could overcome. Saying no to a last-minute date was not playing games. It was protecting something invisible, the perception that her time had value. A girl who was booked was a girl who was wanted, and a girl who was wanted had options. That was the unwritten math, and every girl understood it by the time she turned 15. Her grandmother had taught her mother, and her mother had taught her. The lesson never needed a textbook because it lived in the family like an heirloom, passed down through kitchen table conversations and knowing glances. Number 18. She was ready at the door when he arrived. Completely ready before the doorbell rang. A woman was supposed to be completely ready when the gentleman arrived. Running around to apply makeup at the last minute was considered inconsiderate. Any longer than 5 minutes after the doorbell rang would be extremely rude. Pin curls set the night before. Tangy lipstick in natural, 50 cents at the drugstore counter. A dab of Evening in Paris perfume from the blue cobalt bottle, $1.25 at Woolworth's. Everything done before the doorbell rang. She came down the stairs, put together, unhurried, as though she had not spent 90 minutes getting there. The effort was invisible by design. What he saw was the finished version, calm, composed, and worth the wait. That was the craft, not vanity, presentation. The illusion of effortlessness was the highest skill a young woman could master in those years. Making a boy sit on the couch with her father for too long turned the evening awkward before it started. But worse than that, a girl who kept people waiting was labeled difficult, and difficult was a word that closed doors before they ever opened. Number 17. She introduced every date to her parents. In the 1950s, it was customary for girls to introduce all dates to their parents before heading out the door. It was not optional. Teen dating guides encouraged girls to only go out with people their families had met and approved of. The boy standing in the living room, her father rising from his chair. What school did he attend? What church did he attend? What does your father do? The mother in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel, saying nothing but seeing everything. Marion Barclay's Teen Guide to Homemaking, published in 1961, stated it clearly. It is a good idea to have your family meet and approve of the people you know. A boy who could not look her father in the eye was a boy who had something to hide. That introduction was not a formality. It was an inspection. Skip this step, sneak out, meet him at the corner, and her mother would tell the neighbor's mother. By Wednesday, every parent on the block knew she was seeing someone without approval. Unapproved dating was one step from being unsupervised, and that was one step from being talked about. Number 16. She wore the right thing and dressed for his mother. A girl dressed for a date, but the real audience was not the boy. It was every adult who saw her. His mother, most of all. A cotton dress with a Peter Pan collar, saddle shoes for the soda fountain, low heels, and a cardigan for the picture show. A circle skirt for the dance, not too full, not too tight. Hemline at the knee or just below. The Sears Roebuck catalog devoted pages to dresses suitable for dates, with options running from cotton day dresses to more formal evening wear. Her mother ironed it. Her grandmother checked the neckline. No bare shoulders unless it was a formal. Red lipstick or a red dress on a younger girl raised eyebrows. The wrong outfit could disqualify her before she ever opened her mouth to speak a single word. She was not dressing for his approval. She was dressing to pass a test she might never be told she was taking. The way his mother looked at her hemline in the church vestibule 3 Sundays later would decide whether she was ever invited to Sunday dinner. Show up with too much skin, and she was that kind of girl. His mother made one judgment in 3 seconds, and that judgment could end a courtship before the second date. Number 15. She never primped in public. A compact could come out for one quick check, but fixing her hair, reapplying lipstick at the table, powdering her nose in front of anyone, that was forbidden. A compact from the department store counter, gold-toned, $2 or $3. She could open it briefly, glance, close. The restroom was the only acceptable place. A girl who fussed with her appearance in public was telling the room she was not finished, that she was still under construction. The rule was simple: be done before you arrive. After that, you are not a girl getting ready. You are a woman who is present. Vanity on display suggested insecurity, and insecurity was something a well-raised girl never let the world see. Number 14. She let him order for her. It was considered rude for a woman to place her order directly with the waitstaff. She told her date what she wanted, and he relayed it. The diner booth at Howard Johnson's, red vinyl seats. She looked at the menu, decided, leaned in, and told him quietly. He spoke to the waitress. In the 1950s, a date was viewed as a social event, and the man was regarded as the host. A cherry Coke for a dime. A grilled cheese sandwich, 20 cents. He ordered both without hesitation. The waitress wrote it down and never once looked at her for confirmation, because that was how it was done. She did not surrender her preference. She communicated it. The difference is everything. He was the voice at the table. She was the one who decided what that voice would say. Number 13. There were foods she would not eat on a date. No corn on the cob, no spaghetti, too much twirling, too much risk. No fried chicken eaten with the hands, no lobster that required cracking and picking. Nothing that dripped, nothing that splattered, nothing that demanded a second napkin. A dating guide from the British magazine Woman's Own warned that fruits could cause embarrassment in restaurants. Cherries should be put in the mouth whole and the stones carefully placed on a spoon. A girl ordered things she could eat neatly with a fork. A patty melt, a club sandwich cut into quarters, a slice of pie, always with a fork, never the fingers. She studied the menu not for what she wanted most, but for what she could eat most gracefully. It was not about hunger, it was about composure. Messy eating signaled she had not been taught, and had not been taught meant her mother had failed. A daughter's table manners reflected her entire household. One dropped piece of spaghetti on a white blouse could undo an entire evening's careful presentation. Number 12. She kept her knees together, her back straight, and her hands visible. Posture was not optional. A girl's body language on a date was read like a headline: knees together, angled to one side, ankles crossed, never the legs. Hands on the table or in her lap. No elbows on the counter. At the movies, her hands stayed in her own lap unless he reached for one. Emily Post's Etiquette, Revised Edition 1955, addressed how a young woman should carry herself in public, including her posture and how she sat. A slouch told the room that nobody at home had cared enough to correct her before she left the house. Her posture was a telegraph. Straight back meant self-respect. Crossed ankles meant composure. Hands visible meant nothing to hide. Every woman in that generation knew. You are being read before you are being heard. Number 11. She was expected to date around before going steady. Many parents in the 1950s wanted teens to date around. Going steady too soon was considered limiting. Variety was how you figured out what and who really fit. A girl with one boyfriend by sophomore year raised eyebrows. The proper thing was to accept dates from several boys, the soda fountain with one, the picture show with another, the school dance with a third. A girl's dance card was a measure of her social standing. The girl with the most names was the most desirable, not because she was loose, but because she was in demand. A girl who dated widely was considered well-rounded and socially mature, not scattered or fickle. Playing the field was not a game. It was an education. A girl who had dated 3 or 4 boys before settling on one understood what she wanted and what she would not accept. That knowledge was her armor. Stop and notice something. Not a single rule so far has been about what she felt. Every one has been about what she showed: the posture, the fork, the hemline, the dance card. A girl in 1955 lived inside a display case. These were not restrictions designed to punish her. They were the grammar of a language every woman was expected to speak fluently. Composure was not a performance. It was survival. And today, when 63% of young men under 30 in America describe themselves as single and the marriage rate has fallen to its lowest point in recorded American history, it is worth asking what was lost when those standards disappeared. Not the rigidity, not the silence, but the structure, the clarity, the sense that someone was watching because someone cared. Number 10. The 3-date rule before a kiss. Kissing on a first date often meant the end of the relationship right then. The unspoken standard was 3 dates minimum before a kiss. The end of the evening on the front porch. The yellow light above the door. His hands in his pockets. Her back against the screen door. 3 dates, 3 tests. After the third, maybe a brief kiss, lips closed, chaste enough that if her younger sister was watching through the curtain, no one would be embarrassed. That small restraint built more anticipation than any grand romantic gesture ever could between 2 young people. The wait was not cruelty. It was a filter. A boy who stayed through 3 evenings of conversation without pressing for more was a boy interested in her, not in what he could take from her. The 3-date rule did not suppress desire. It revealed character. A kiss on the first date, and word traveled by Monday morning. The word, once it went out, did not come off. It stayed. Number 9. Drive-in behavior had invisible boundaries. Over 4,000 drive-in theaters across America by 1958, $1 per car at most. The speaker clipped to the driver's side window. The second feature started at 9:30. The girl sat on her side. If he put his arm on the back of the seat, she allowed it or she did not. If his hand moved lower, she moved it. There were police on patrol at every drive-in, shining flashlights into back seats. Communities set up watchdog forces specifically to break up what they called unseemly activity. Local churches lobbied town councils to shut down drive-ins entirely because they believed temptation thrived in darkness. The drive-in was the first private space most young couples ever shared, and inside that privacy, a girl carried every rule she had ever learned. Not because her father was watching, because she had decided before the opening credits exactly what she would and would not allow. That decision made in advance was the real rule, not the flashlight, not the patrol. The girl's own mind, already made up before the car was parked. Those rules were the armor she wore every time she left the house, but underneath every single one of them was something quieter. A private test performed on the very first evening that told her everything she needed to know before a second date ever happened. No rule book covered it, and no mother ever needed to explain it twice. Number 15. She watched whether he came to the front door. The first test started before she even saw his face. She listened. A car horn from the curb meant the evening was already over. What she waited for was the sound of a car door closing, then footsteps on the front walkway, then the doorbell. Her father sat in the armchair with the evening paper, not reading it. Her mother had switched the porch light on 5 minutes early. If the boy honked from the street, the girl did not go outside. There was no discussion. Her mother had one line for it. If he cannot walk 30 feet to your front door, he will not walk through anything hard for you either. No second chance. The front door was the first gate. A man who would not pass through it never got to the second one. Number 14. She checked his fingernails before she checked his face. Within the first 10 seconds, her eyes went to his hands. The handshake with her father, the arm he offered. She was not looking at his suit or his jawline. She was looking at his nails, clean, trimmed, scrubbed. It did not matter if he worked a factory line at Bethlehem Steel or stocked shelves at the A&P. What mattered was whether he cared enough to clean up before he came for her. A Sears work shirt cost $1.90. Ivory soap cost a dime. A nail brush cost a nickel. Effort was free. A man who cleaned his hands before he touched hers was telling her something he never had to say out loud. Number 13. She listened to how he spoke to her father. He did not simply pick her up. He presented himself at the front door like a man with business to conduct. The handshake. Good evening, sir. Eye contact held but not forced. Her father asking where they were going and what time she would be home. She stood in the hallway listening, sometimes at the top of the stairs. She was not part of this conversation. She did not need to be. If his voice got smaller, she heard it. If it got too smooth, she heard that too. The house was quiet enough to hear a liar. She did not need her father's approval. She needed to hear the boy speak when he thought she was not the audience. Now this next one might seem small, but the girls who knew it never forgot it. Number 12. She noticed whether he walked on the street side of the sidewalk. When they walked together, she noted which side he took. The curb side. Always. So if a car jumped the curb or a puddle splashed, he caught it. This rule was older than the automobile. It came from the days when slop was dumped from upper windows onto the road below. By the 1950s, it was muscle memory. A boy raised right did it without thinking. He shifted sides at every crossing. She never once asked him to. She just watched whether he did. Protection that required no announcement was the only kind she trusted. Number 11. She watched his shoes. After his hands, his shoes. Polished, or at least clean. Florsheim Imperials if his family had money. Jarman or Freeman if they did not. the leather buffed with kiwi shoe polish from the flat tin, the lid pried off with a thumbnail, the brush working in circles, the rag buffing to a shine. 3 minutes of effort on a bedroom floor. She could see it, or she could see its absence. Scuffed shoes on a first date told her he either did not care or did not know. Both were problems. Her mother told her once, and she never forgot it. A man's shoes tell you where he has been and where he thinks he is going. 5 tests in, and not a single one of them involved a word he said to her. Every test so far was about what he did when no one was grading him. The 1950s girl was not looking for a performance. She was looking for a pattern. A man who performs on a first date will eventually stop performing. A man who simply is that way will not. That was the difference she was trained to find. Number 10. She watched how he treated the waitress, the diner, the drive-in, the soda fountain counter. She watched his mouth, but not when he was talking to her. She watched it when he spoke to the person serving their food. A Howard Johnson's on Route 9. A Woolworth's lunch counter with red vinyl stools. A car hop at the A&W skating up to the window with a metal tray. Did he say thank you without being reminded? Did he look the waitress in the eye? Did he snap his fingers? Did he complain about the coffee? A cheeseburger plate ran 65 cents. A slice of pie, 35. The tip was a dime, left face up on the Formica counter. How a man treats someone who can do nothing for him is who he actually is. She knew that at 17. Some people never learn it. Number 9. She listened for whether he mentioned his mother. Not a speech, not a complaint, just whether she existed somewhere in his conversation. My mother makes a pot roast every Sunday. My mother worked at the telephone exchange before I was born. A sentence, maybe 2. Said the way you mentioned someone who shaped you. Not a mama's boy tribute. Not silence either. If he never mentioned her at all, it told the girl one of 2 things. Either the relationship was broken, or he did not think women were worth mentioning. Both were written down in her mind before dessert arrived. A man who could speak about his mother with quiet, easy respect was a man who had been taught that women had weight in this world. And a boy who had never learned that was not going to learn it from a girl over a root beer float. But the next test was the one the mothers talked about most. Number 8. She noticed whether he opened every door, not just the first one. The car door at her house. That was easy. Every boy did that one because her father was watching. The real test was the rest of the evening. The restaurant door, the second car door at the diner, the door leaving the movie theater, the door back at her front porch at the end of the night. He walks around. She waits. Not because she cannot open a door, because she is watching whether his courtesy has a shelf life. The first door is the audition. The fourth door is the man. Consistency was the only test that mattered, and it could not be faked for an entire evening. Number 7. She watched whether he carried a clean handkerchief, folded in the back pocket or the breast pocket of his sport coat, white cotton, pressed flat with a steam iron. Not for him, for her. In case she got something on her hands at the drive-in, in case her eyes watered at the picture show, in case the August humidity made her blotting powder give up. An Aero brand handkerchief, 2 for 49 cents at the department store. A man who carried one had been taught something most boys today have never heard. That someone else's comfort comes before your own convenience. That square of white cotton was the smallest thing he carried and the loudest thing it said. None of these tests required money. Not one. The boy driving a used 1949 Ford with rust on the fender passed the same tests as the boy in his father's new Buick Roadmaster. That was the genius of the whole system. It screened for character, not income. The mothers who designed these tests had married during the Depression. They watched men lose jobs, lose homes, lose everything but what was inside them. They knew exactly how fast money disappears, and they knew exactly how slow character does. Number 6. She watched how he handled the check. He paid. That was not the test. How he paid was the test. The check placed face down on the table by the waitress. He picked it up without looking at it first. No wince, no comment about the price, no joke about what she ordered. He placed the bills inside the check folder, left the tip separately on the table, and stood up. A dinner for two at a decent restaurant in 1955 cost about $3.50. He probably made $40 a week. He did not mention either number. The test was not whether he could afford the meal. It was whether he could carry a weight without making her feel it. Number 5. She noticed what he ordered and whether he ordered for her. The waitress standing with a pencil and a green order pad. He turned to the girl first. "What looks good to you?" She told him. He turned to the waitress and placed both orders from memory. If she wanted the roast chicken, he said roast chicken. He did not substitute. He did not improve upon it. He did not suggest the cheaper plate. He relayed her words exactly as she said them. This was not control. This was public courtesy. He was her representative at the table, and his only job was to represent her accurately, listening to a woman and then speaking her words exactly as she gave them. There may be no rarer skill in any century. Number 4. She watched whether he kept his hands to himself. The entire evening, every single minute, a hand on the small of her back guiding her through a doorway. That was fine. An arm offered for the walk from the car, also fine. Anything beyond that on a first date, and the evening was over in her mind, even if her face did not show it. The arm that crept along the back of the movie theater seat at the Rialto. The hand that drifted toward a knee under the table. She said nothing. She moved. 1 inch. And that 1 inch was the loudest word she spoke all night. Restraint was the test. The young men who passed it were the ones who understood that patience is not the absence of wanting. It is the proof of respect. Every one of these tests was designed by women who could not easily leave a bad marriage. Divorce in the 1950s was a scandal that followed you for life. Alimony was often legally difficult to secure, and though mothers were increasingly favored in custody battles under the tender years doctrine, a divorced woman faced devastating financial and social hurdles. These mothers were not playing games on a Friday night. They were conducting the most important interview of their daughter's life. And they gave her one evening to get the answer right. Number 3. She watched what time he brought her home. 10 o'clock, sometimes 9:30. The curfew was set by her father. It was not negotiable, and it was not a suggestion. The porch light on. Her father's shadow behind the screen door. The car pulling into the driveway 5 minutes early. Not 5 minutes late. 5 minutes early meant he respected the house. 5 minutes late meant he thought the rules bent for him. A Timex on his wrist, $3.95 from the Sears catalog. He checked it at the movie. He checked it during dessert. He was not bored. He was proving something. A man who could manage time on a date could manage a household, a paycheck, and a promise. The clock was the one test nobody argued with. Number 2. She told her mother everything, and her mother already knew half of it. The real test did not happen on the date. It happened in the kitchen afterward. 11 o'clock at night, the kitchen light still burning. Her mother sitting at the formica table with a cup of Sanka and a plate of Lorna Doones. The girl sat down and her mother did not ask, "Did you have a good time?" She asked, "What did he do?" and the girl reported. Every door, every word to the waitress. The shoes, the handkerchief, the hands, the time. Her mother sipped and listened and nodded. Sometimes she said, "See him again." Sometimes she said nothing at all. And the nothing was the answer. Two women at a kitchen table running a debrief that no business school could improve upon. The intelligence was shared. The judgment was final. Number 1. The real test was whether she could see him, sitting in her father's chair. This one was never spoken out loud. It lived in a single image she carried all evening long. Her father's chair, the one by the window in the living room, the one at the head of the dinner table, the chair where the bills got opened and the newspaper got read and the hard news got delivered. Could she see this boy sitting in that chair in 20 years? This nervous, clean fingernail, polished shoe, door-opening boy. Could she see him holding a baby the way her father held her, carving a turkey at Thanksgiving, sitting up at 2 a.m. with a sick child pressed against his chest? She was not asking whether he made her heart race. She was asking whether he could carry the life she already knew was coming. Romance was a luxury. Reliability was a religion. And the girl who could tell the difference at 17 had been taught by a woman who learned it the hard way. Somewhere right now, a woman in her 80s remembers every single one. Not because someone reminded her, because the boy who passed them all is sitting in the next room, 70 years later, and he still opens every door. Knowing he was the right one was only half the equation. The other half was making sure she never gave him a single reason to wonder whether she was. That half of the equation followed her long after the porch light went off and the car pulled away. It was a test she kept administering for the rest of the relationship, whether he ever realized it or not. Number 20. She never let him honk from the curb. He came to the door. He rang the bell. He met whoever was home. If he sat in the car and honked the horn, there was no date. A Ford Galaxy 500 idling at the curb with the headlights cutting through the dusk. The creak of the screen door, her father standing up from his chair in the living room. The handshake, the dry palm. A short conversation about nothing important. Then the walk to the car. He went around to the passenger side and opened her door before he opened his own. The dome light on for a moment. The click of the latch. The doorbell was not a formality. It was the first test. A boy who would not walk 30 feet to her front door would not walk much further for anything else. She knew that before she knew how to say it. But before the doorbell ever rang, before he even pulled up to the curb, there was something she would never do, something that took more discipline than any other rule on this list. Number 19. She never called him first. She did not pick up the telephone to call a boy. Not first, not ever. If she liked him, she waited. The call was his to make. The rotary phone mounted on the kitchen wall. The long spiral cord stretched around the corner into the hallway for whatever privacy it could give. In many homes, a party line shared by 2 or 3 families on the block. Everyone could hear the weight of the black Bakelite receiver, sitting at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night, willing that phone to ring, not touching it, not even looking at it too long. The waiting was not weakness. It was a decision. She chose not to chase. And in that silence, she taught him something no words ever could. Her attention had to be earned. It was not simply available. Number 18. She never wore pants on a date. A date meant a dress or a skirt. Slacks were for the garden, for Saturday errands, not for a Friday night. A shirt-waist dress with a full skirt, hemmed just below the knee. Cotton or a Dacron polyester blend from the Sears catalog. Stockings held up by a garter belt or the clips on a girdle. Pantyhose were around but would not completely replace stockings and girdles until later in the decade. A pair of kitten heels from the Tom McCann shoe store at $3.95. The stiff rustle of crinoline underneath. The way the skirt moved when she turned. The seam running straight up the back of each stocking, perfectly aligned. Her sister checked it for her before she left the bedroom. She dressed for the occasion because the occasion deserved it. Some hours in the week were not ordinary. They should not look that way. Number 17. She never left the house without her girdle. Under the dress, under the slip, there was a girdle. A panty girdle or a roll-on. She did not go on a date without one, no matter her size. A Playtex living girdle at $4 or $5 from the department store. The stretch of it going on. The snap of the metal garter clips fastening onto the stocking tops. A full nylon slip over the top with a lace hem. Architecture beneath the dress that nobody would ever see. Nobody asked her to explain it. Nobody saw it. But she knew it was there. It mattered to her, not because of him, because of the line she held between dressed and finished. Number 16. She never left the house without her full face on. She did not walk out that door half done. Foundation, powder, lipstick, mascara, every single time. Max Factor Pancake Foundation, matte and smooth. A pressed powder compact for touch-ups through the evening. Revlon Super Lustrous Lipstick at $1.10. Maybelline Cake Mascara, the kind you had to wet with a tiny brush. A dab of Evening in Paris or white shoulders behind each ear. The click of the compact closing in the quiet bedroom. The blot of lipstick on a tissue folded in half. She did not leave the house unfinished. Not for him, for herself. The face she put on was the face. She chose to show. Choosing was the whole point. 5 things in. Notice something. Not one of them was about impressing him. Every single one was about the standard she held for herself before the evening began. She had a code, and the code was hers. Nobody sold it to her. Nobody renewed it monthly. Nobody posted it online for strangers to approve. She carried it the way she carried her handbag. Close, quiet, and never open for inspection. Number 15. She never applied makeup at the dinner table. The compact stayed in the purse. If she needed to touch up her lipstick, she excused herself to the powder room. The small patent leather clutch with the snap closure. Inside, the compact, a tube of lipstick, a clean handkerchief, a few folded dollar bills for an emergency taxi home. She said, "Excuse me," and found the ladies' room, the fluorescent light above the mirror, the click of the compact hinge. One quick reapplication. Back at the table in 3 minutes. The result was public. The process was not. That distinction mattered to her. She did not confuse grooming with conversation. And when she got back to that table, another rule was waiting. One that sounds impossible to the modern ear, but was standard practice in every restaurant in America. Number 14. She never ordered for herself. He ordered for both of them. She told him what she wanted before the waiter arrived. He spoke to the waiter. She did not. A supper club with white tablecloths and a candle flickering in a red glass holder. The waiter in a black vest with a pad and pencil. She leaned in and told him she thought she would like the chicken. He nodded. When the waiter came, he ordered the chicken for her and the steak for himself. A sit-down dinner for two ran $3 to $5 per person in those years. It was not submission. It was choreography. Both people knew the steps. The dance only worked when neither one tried to lead and follow at the same time. Number 13. She never ordered something messy or difficult to eat. No spaghetti, no barbecue ribs, no corn on the cob. Nothing that required two hands or a bib or an apology. A chef salad, a petite filet, a club sandwich cut clean, small bites, napkin in the lap at all times. She never spoke with her mouth full. She never reached across the table. A cup of coffee at the end of the meal, cream and no sugar, held with both hands. The waitress refilled it without being asked. Good restaurants knew when to come and when to stay away. The meal was not the point. The company was. She ate to sustain the conversation, not to interrupt it. Number 12. She never had more than one drink, one cocktail, maybe a glass of wine, nursed slowly through the evening. That was the limit. A Tom Collins, a whiskey sour, a glass of Lancer's Rose in the squat ceramic bottle. A cocktail cost 75 cents to $1 at a decent lounge in those years. She held the glass and she sipped. She did not finish it before the appetizer arrived. The condensation on the side of the glass, the slow turn of the stirrer between her fingers. Control was not a burden. It was a wall she built, and it stayed up all evening, no matter how well things were going, especially then. Number 11. She never split the check. She did not reach for the bill. She did not offer to pay half. She did not mention money at all. The black vinyl check holder sat on the white tablecloth. His hand reached for it. Her hand stayed in her lap or around her coffee cup. She said, "Thank you." She meant it. The whole dinner, 2 entrees, 2 drinks, and coffee, came to maybe $8 or $9. He left $1 on the table for the waiter. It was not about the money. It was about letting him do what he came to do. Offering to split the bill would have embarrassed him. She did not embarrass people, not on purpose, not on a Saturday night. 10 rules in, and everyone sounds like a restriction. But ask a woman who lived by them, and she will tell you something the modern world does not want to hear. She felt more in control, not less. Every rule was a wall she built around her own dignity. She did not build those walls because someone told her to. She built them because she watched what happened to women who did not. Today, Americans spend billions of dollars a year on dating apps. Reported loneliness and social isolation have skyrocketed since the 1960s. More choices, more technology, more freedom, and somehow less of whatever it was that made 2 people sit across a table and actually see each other. The walls were not a prison, they were a fortress, and she held the key. Number 10. She never talked about a previous boyfriend. The question might come up. She redirected it. She asked about him instead, gave nothing away. Dessert at the diner, cherry pie, a la mode, coffee in a thick ceramic mug with a saucer. He asks if there was ever anyone serious. She smiles. She asks about his family instead. Her past was a locked drawer. She did not open it for someone she had known 3 hours. Her history was hers. She did not owe him a tour. The mystery she kept was not a game. It was the simple recognition that some things are earned over time, not offered over pie. She kept her past to herself. But there was a future she kept quiet about too, one she thought about far more than she would ever admit. Number 9. She never brought up marriage or the future, even if her mother asked every Sunday after church, even if her hope chest was already half full. She did not mention it, not on a first date, not on a fifth. The Lane Cedar Hope chest at the foot of her bed, $39.95 from the furniture store. Inside, embroidered pillowcases she stitched herself, a towel set from Sears, a set of silver plate from her grandmother. She had been filling it since she was 16. He would never know. She let the thing grow in its own time. Naming it too soon was a way of killing it. She understood something that required no education to learn. Patience is not the absence of desire. It is desire with discipline. Number 8. She never let the conversation go dead. She came prepared. She had things to talk about. Silence at a dinner table was not mysterious. It was failure. She read the paper that morning. She knew what was playing at the Rialto. She knew the score from Saturday. Ladies' Home Journal ran regular columns on conversation starters for dates. She kept the rhythm going the way a drummer keeps time. A question. A laugh. An observation. Another question. She did not show up empty. She came to the table, ready to hold her half of the evening. That was not effort. That was respect for the occasion and for herself. Number 7. She never argued with him in public. If he said something she disagreed with, about politics, about Kennedy, about the neighbors, she held her tongue at the table. The discussion would happen later, or never. The low murmur of the restaurant, other couples at nearby tables, the clink of silverware on china. He says something she knows is wrong. She sips her coffee. She says, "That is interesting." She changes the subject. If it mattered enough, she would bring it up in the car on the way home, quietly, without an audience. Disagreement was private. Composure was public. She knew the difference because she watched her mother draw that same line 1,000 times without ever drawing attention to it. Number 6. She never went to a drive-in on a first date. The drive-in was for established couples. A first date meant a proper movie theater, a diner, a dance, somewhere with lights and other people around. The drive-in charged about $1 a carload. The speaker hooked over the car window. The smell of popcorn drifting from the snack bar. The dark. She knew what the drive-in was for, and she was not going there with a boy she barely knew. A first date was the Orpheum or the Rialto. The indoor theater with the red velvet seats and the lights that came up between the newsreel and the feature. She controlled the setting. The setting controlled the expectations. That was not manipulation. It was planning. And she was very good at planning. Number 5. She never went on a date without telling someone where she would be. 14 things. Not one of them required money. Not one required a product. Not one required advice from a stranger on the internet. Every single one required something that cost nothing and is now in desperately short supply. Self-possession. The quiet certainty that how you carry yourself matters more than how you present yourself. Today, the global beauty industry alone brings in over $600 billion a year. Most of it sells women's solutions to problems that did not exist before someone invented them. She did not call it confidence. She did not call it empowerment. She called it getting ready for Saturday night. She told her mother, her roommate, her sister on the telephone, the name of the boy, the name of the restaurant, what time she expected to be home. If nobody was around, she left a note on the kitchen table, written in ballpoint on a scrap torn from the pad by the phone. Going to dinner at Marino's with David Callahan, home by 11. Her mother glanced at the clock at 11:15, then at 11:30. Then the porch light went on. This was not surveillance. This was the net beneath the wire. Women looked out for each other long before anyone built an app for it. a sentence on a scrap of paper, and a porch light that stayed on until the door opened. Number 4. She never kept him waiting. She was ready when the doorbell rang. Not almost ready, not 5 minutes away. Ready. The preparation started 2 hours before. Hair set that afternoon, the rollers came out at 5. The dress laid across the bed since morning, shoes polished with a rag. She heard the car pull up at 7:28. By the time the bell rang at 7:30, she was standing in the hallway. One last check in the mirror by the front door, one adjustment to the collar, one touch of the hair. Then her hand on the doorknob. Punctuality was not obedience. It was proof that she took this seriously. She respected his time because she respected her own. A woman who respects her own time does not waste the time of anyone else. She was always ready, always composed, always in control. But there was one moment in the evening when that composure was truly tested. The rule she followed then is one most people today would not believe. Number 3. She never let him see her lose her composure. If the movie was sad, she blinked. If the evening went wrong, a flat tire, a rude waiter, a wrong turn on some dark road, she kept her voice even. She did not fall apart in front of a man she barely knew. A linen handkerchief folded in a square inside her purse. Pressed with a hot iron that morning. Monogrammed, maybe. A gift from an aunt. If the restaurant was closed when they arrived, she smiled and said, "Well, there is always Howard Johnson's." If the rain came down and she had no umbrella, she laughed and walked faster. The handkerchief was for real emergencies, not small ones. Composure was not suppression. It was the decision to show someone only what she chose to show. There is a word for that. The word is power. She had it in quantities that required no explanation. Number 2. She never kissed on a first date. The evening ended at the front door. She said goodnight. She went inside. That was the rule. The walk from the car to the front porch. His hand near the small of her back, barely touching. The porch light on. Her father made certain of that. The yellow glow of a 60-watt bulb behind frosted glass. The pause on the top step. She looked at him. She told him she had a wonderful time. She said goodnight. She turned the knob and stepped inside. The door closed. She leaned against it for one moment in the dark hallway and listened to his footsteps going back to the car, then the engine turning over, then the sound of tires on gravel fading toward the end of the street. She gave him something to come back for, and he came back, because the thing that is delayed is the thing that is remembered. And the thing that is remembered is the thing that lasts. Number 1. She never let him see what it took. 2 hours at the vanity, 3 dresses tried on and put back on the hanger. The rollers, the bobby pins, the slip, the girdle, the stockings, the mascara, the second coat of lipstick blotted on a tissue. All of it invisible by the time the doorbell rang. The bedroom at 5:30 on a Saturday evening. The bedspread covered in rejected outfits. A hairpin curled on the vanity. The slight fog on the mirror from her breath as she leaned in close to check the mascara. A tiny smear of Revlon on the tissue in the wastebasket. A half moon of red, the ghost of a mouth. She smoothed her skirt. She turned once in the mirror. She walked to the door, looking as though she had always looked that way. The greatest thing she ever did was make it look effortless. She never told him. He never asked. That quiet agreement that the work behind the beauty would remain invisible was not dishonesty. It was grace. She carried it the way her mother carried it, without a word, without a single request for credit. She simply arrived at the door, luminous and complete. and let him believe it was easy. 20 things. Not one was about being less. Every one was about being more deliberate, more composed, more sovereign over herself and the evening ahead. She did not need a book or a brand or an influencer. She watched her mother, and her mother watched hers. And the rules passed the same way the good china came down from the top shelf, carefully, silently, and only when it mattered. Somewhere tonight, a girl is getting ready for a date. Her phone is open on the bed. Nobody taught her what that woman knew. Nobody sat her down in the kitchen and told her. It would not hurt her to know what the woman before her knew. She knew exactly what she would never do. But the deeper question, the one most people today never think to ask, is whether the rules she followed were actually wrong. Because buried underneath the restrictions was a logic that modern dating quietly abandoned and has never fully replaced. Number 10. He came to the door. A boy did not pull up to the curb and honk. He parked the car. He walked to the front door. He rang the bell. He introduced himself to her parents before she ever came downstairs. The father rose from his armchair, folding the evening paper. Living room small talk. What school? What church? What does your father do? The boy's shoes polished, hands scrubbed. Maybe a sport coat borrowed from his older brother. The girl coming down the stairs after 5 minutes, not before. A woman on a nostalgia forum wrote about her father. He shook every boy's hand and said, "I will be up when you get back." That was enough. No boy ever forgot those words. That single sentence carried more weight than any rule book ever written. He showed his face. He gave his name. He looked her father in the eye. Accountability was built into the first 60 seconds of every date. That doorbell only rang because something happened first. He had to call. Number 9. The boy called on the telephone first. A girl did not call a boy. He called her on the family telephone. Whoever answered that phone was almost certainly not her. The rotary phone sat on the kitchen wall. Click, click, click as the dial came back around. Party lines in smaller towns meant neighbors could listen in. Her father often answered, asking who was calling. The boy gave his full name, then waited. The cord stretched around the hallway corner for a sliver of privacy. 17 magazines said it plainly. Never call him first, let him pursue. A long-distance call cost 75 cents for 3 minutes. That was a serious investment for a teenage boy. A boy who picked up that phone and dialed had already decided something. She was worth the risk of rejection and the certainty of her father's voice. Effort was the entrance fee. There was no way around it. That filter kept out every boy who was not serious enough to try. Once he got the answer he wanted, the next question was what to wear. In those years, dressing up was not optional. Number 8. You dressed up for every single date. He wore a pressed shirt. She wore a dress. A date was an occasion, and you dressed like it mattered. Him in a white button-down, starched by his mother. Maybe a necktie. Slacks with a sharp crease. Polished Oxfords. A dab of Old Spice, 39 cents at the drugstore. Her in a cotton or taffeta dress. Saddle shoes or low heels. A touch of evening in Paris perfume in the blue cobalt bottle. $1.25 at Woolworth's. No jeans, no sneakers, no sweatshirts. Not because there were laws, because there were standards. They were not wealthy. They believed the other person was worth the effort. The act of getting ready was itself a form of anticipation. Getting dressed was not performance. It was respect. You were telling the other person that this evening meant something. The outfit was not expensive. The message was. He pressed his shirt. He polished his shoes. And when the check came, he did not hesitate. Number 7. The man always paid. Every date, every time. The dinner, the movie, the malt afterward. No discussion, no splitting. He paid because that was the deal. 2 movie tickets at the Rialto, 70 cents, 2 Coca-Colas at the soda fountain, a dime each. A burger and fries for 2, $1.40. A full evening out for under $3. Boys who were serious about a girl budgeted their wages around Saturday night. If he could not afford dinner and a movie, he bought her an ice cream cone. 15 cents at Dairy Queen. The amount did not matter. The gesture did. Every dime he spent was a dime he had earned with his own hands. Paying was not about dominance. It was a declaration. I can take care of something. I can plan ahead. A boy with $1.75 in a plan was proving something no dating profile ever could. And most of the time, especially early on, he was not proving it to her alone. There were witnesses. Number 6. Double dating was standard. For the first several dates, you went out as a foursome, 2 couples, 1 car. This was not a suggestion. It was how it was done. 4 teenagers in a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, AM radio tuned to the local station, the drive-in movie theater. 2 couples sharing a bucket of popcorn, 25 cents. Bowling alleys, roller rinks, the sock hop in the school gymnasium. The other couple was a buffer, a safety net, and a built-in audience for the awkwardness. If the conversation died, someone always saved it. Nobody was ever truly alone with a stranger. Safety was not an app feature. It was your best friend sitting 3 feet away. Community was built into the structure of romance itself. Some of those foursomes stayed friends for the rest of their lives. Here is what these first 5 rules have in common. Every single one required a young man to be visible and accountable, and slightly uncomfortable. He showed up, he called, he dressed, he paid, he did it in front of other people. That discomfort was not a flaw in the system. It was the system. But it was not only the boys who made things public. When a girl decided a boy had earned her commitment, the whole school knew it by Monday morning. Number 5. Going steady was a public declaration. When it became serious, she wore his class ring on a chain around her neck, or his Letterman pin on her sweater. The whole school saw it. That was the point. The class ring, too large for her finger. Girls wrapped Angora yarn around the band to make it fit, or hung it on a gold chain from the 5 and dime. The Letterman pin through the cashmere of her cardigan, right over the heart. Cafeteria, Monday morning, her friends noticing before first period. Word traveled by lunch. Going steady was not ambiguous. If the ring came off and went back, that was public too. Everyone knew. Commitment was not a text message. It was something you could see across a hallway. Something with weight you could feel against your collarbone. You were in or you were out. The whole world knew which. There was no gray area, and that clarity made everything stronger. The world had a clock on it too, because no matter how steady things were, someone at home was watching the time. Number 4. Curfew was non-negotiable. She was home by 10, maybe 10:30 on a special occasion. Prom night, maybe 11. Her father was awake. The porch light was on. This was not a request. A single yellow bulb above the front door, the clock on the mantelpiece, the father in his armchair. Not reading. Waiting. Headlights pulling into the driveway at 9:58. A boy who was smart said goodnight on the porch and did not linger. 10 o'clock meant 10 o'clock, not 10:15. A man in his 70s wrote that he once brought a girl home 12 minutes late. Her father met him at the door and told him there would not be a next time. There was not. Curfew was not punishment. It was the loudest way a father could say, "I am paying attention." The porch light was a declaration. Someone in this house cares enough to stay awake. And that was the kind of love that shaped how a girl expected to be treated for the rest of her life. The curfew told you when the evening ended, but there was a rule that governed where it began, and it was never behind a closed door. Number 3. First dates were always in public. The soda fountain, the movie theater, the school dance, the bowling alley. First dates happened where other people were, always. The counter at Woolworth's, red vinyl stools, a cherry phosphate for a dime, a chocolate malt for 20 cents, 2 straws. The Rialto, 35 cents a ticket. Newsreel first, then the cartoon, then the picture. The school gymnasium on Friday nights. Crepe paper streamers and a record player on the stage. Chaperones by the punch bowl. The entire concept of a private first meeting did not exist. Privacy was earned. It came after trust, after time, after her parents knew his name and which church his family attended. The public date was patience. Patience was respect. You learned who someone was by how they treated a waitress, not by what they whispered in private. They met in public. They dressed with care. And when they sat across from each other, there were things they simply did not say. Not because they could not, because they understood something we have lost entirely. Number 2. There were things you did not discuss. Money, past relationships, physical intimacy. On a date, certain doors stayed closed, not out of dishonesty, out of respect for the pace of trust. The conversation at the diner booth. What are you studying? Have you been to the county fair? Do you have brothers and sisters? A boy did not ask about her previous boyfriend. A girl did not ask how much he earned. These were not secrets. They were boundaries, and those boundaries made people lean in closer, not pull away. Mystery was not a game. It was a gift. You did not hand someone your entire biography in 90 minutes. You revealed yourself slowly, like pages in a book. There is a word for what that created. Anticipation. It made people fall harder and stay longer than any algorithm ever has. What you held back gave the other person a reason to come back. Every rule on this list has one thing in common: slowness. The phone call was slow. The courtship was slow. The trust was slow. None of it was an accident. These families understood something a $6 billion dating industry will never admit. Intimacy that is earned lasts. Intimacy that is instant evaporates. Today, more than 60% of young men in America describe themselves as single. The marriage rate has fallen to its lowest point in recorded American history. Speed did not solve loneliness. It manufactured it at scale. And underneath all of it, the curfew, the dress code, the father at the door, there was one rule that held everything else together. Number 1. Dating had a destination. You did not date recreationally. Courtship was not entertainment. Dating was the road to marriage. Everyone understood this from the first phone call. The progression was known and expected. Soda fountain dates to dinner dates, meeting the family to Sunday supper, at her parents' table, the conversation with her father, the ring, an engagement diamond from the local jeweler, a quarter carat, $60 to $90. 2 months' wages for a stock boy. He saved for it the way his father saved for the house. The wedding at the church, the reception in the family backyard, potato salad and sheet cake. The entire neighborhood invited. Median age of first marriage in 1956 was 22 for men, 20 for women. They were young, they were serious. An 81-year-old man wrote that he knew by the third date he would marry her. He told his mother the next morning. She said, "Then you better start saving." He did. They were married 53 years. He never once regretted a single dollar he set aside. 10 rules. Not one required an internet connection or a monthly subscription. These people were not old-fashioned. They were right. We are the ones catching up. And somewhere tonight, a boy is pulling into a driveway, checking his mirror, straightening his tie. He walks up the steps. He rings the bell. The porch light is on. The father opens the door. And everything begins the way it was always supposed to. Every segment you just watched describes a different face of the same invisible system. A system where a girl's choices were observed, recorded, and judged by people who never told her they were keeping score. What connects all of it is not nostalgia. It is the absence of something modern dating never replaced. These women were not following quaint traditions. They were navigating a world that watched everything and wrote nothing down. And they did it with a precision that no app and no advice column has come close to matching. The rules were never written down on purpose. Not because they were unimportant, because the women who enforced them needed deniability more than they needed a handbook. A girl's entire future could vanish over coffee at a beauty parlor decided by women who never said a word to her face. The courtship rules disappeared. The ledger never did.